All right, so it is 5:30 on February 5th, and we are opening up the bond hearing for the solar project. And are you guys here for that? Yes. Have you seen the presentation yet? Okay, perfect. We will be doing the presentation.
Perfect.
Thanks for being here. What a great presentation for you. The members of our commission are present. It's myself, Chris Andriski, Letty Bedard, Kate Bonafide, and Rich Lebrecht. We actually first met with Revision Energy in October of 2022. And we met 6 times in 2023. We had 2 stakeholder meetings where the community was invited to come in. We met with our staff and had a conversation, good kind of comment and question kind of session. And then the last meeting we had with the school board, we started working on a warrant article. So just quickly, why solar power and why now? So I've always been intrigued when I go by the arrays in town or I see it at a school. And I think of all the many different reasons all of our stakeholders would be interested in solar power. And the 5 I want to list: clean, reduce those fossil fuels, protecting the planet, sustainable, it's renewable energy, it's abundant energy, cost. So there's initial costs, and we're going to talk about that. That's why we need a bond. However, minimal maintenance, and we'll talk a little bit about the length of time we'd be paying the bond back and total cost of the project. Being a principal, education, and having the arrays on our building is just an amazing way to connect our students with a project that's actually working here. It relates so much to all the STEAM classes that they take here at school. Encourages our students to be innovative and creative and be filled with curiosity. And last, independence, to reduce the dependency of external sources for energy. We talked about that, talked about our meetings and our timeline. Size and cost of the project. I'm going to pass this off to Chris to talk a little bit about the quotes we got.
Thanks, Ron. So we got 2 quotes when we started out from 2 different companies to look at both the array and the project we want to put on. Everything would be on the roof, so we've also done an assessment of our roof. There is some patching that we would need to do on the gymnasium roof. Our other roofs are in good standing for the project over 30 years. So when the panels would start to need to be replaced, 30 years, that's when the roof would need to be replaced. So we're in a good timeline in regards to that. So that is one of the things you have to do before any solar company will put anything on top of a structure. So you can see both were pretty close in size. Cost differential a little bit differently. So the high end was $849,000 for the project. The second quote we got was $713,000, and you can see just a little bit different sizing on the array and the equipment that would go up there. Those were just initials so that we could do the work. When we get done and we put this out, if the project passes in March, then we do a formal RFP process. So we'd open it up to anybody that would like to put in a formal process. Then that timeline is set up, and then the board would select and go with which purchase. So even though we'll have a warrant article that would say up to that $850,000, it could come in much less, and we anticipate that through the formal process. Just so the public is aware, that $849, a year previously, it was at $899. So that one company had already dropped $50,000 in 1 year, and we're starting to see that the pricing of the systems are starting to come down. So those were the 2 that we used to be able to do our analytics, and Richard will talk a little bit about the cost savings that he was able to run through in a minute. Again, we covered the positives. Again, we looked at, when we first looked at this, could we do it through a loan process where we'd have an investor that would get the loan and that it wouldn't be any tax burden on Brentwood. However, from what we heard from our select board, when they did that at the fire station, they did the loan process and you weren't eligible for the tax credit. We are eligible, if you do it yourself, of a 30% tax credit. So on that $850,000 project, $255,000 would come back in a rebate fund from the federal government as that tax credit. So you're really only looking at $525,000 of doing this project. And again, however you'd bond it over the time to be able to save money. So that's one of the encouraging things. Some of the other really positives is the amount of money we're going to be saving on electricity, especially when we're drawing so much energy in the summer months, and then being able to disperse that and pay that out. And again, that's where we really relied on Richard and his knowledge to be able to help us out with that. And we talked about the RFP process in the opening. So those were really things that we had been considered, and we walked through. We met before every board meeting, from last year to talk about the benefits. We opened up. This is the third meeting that we've had for the public. So we did it at different times of the day, different times of the week, to try and encourage as many people to come in and give us feedback about this project. I'm going to turn this over to Richard because this is kind of his baby and talks about how we look at in regards to the pricing.
Yeah, so I built an hourly spreadsheet model using the actual KWH every hour from, if it was 2022 or 2021, for the school that Eversource provided. Laid up against that an hourly simulation of what the PV would do. And just for info, the school's usage was somewhere around 300,000 kilowatt hours a year. And the solar's gonna do around 375 or, thousand. So it's gonna create a little bit more than is consumed, which would, be available if the load in the building were ever to grow. But also you get net metering credits for all of that excess power. So I built a model of both how much power consumption that the PV is going to avoid, which is a big savings on your bill, plus the credit you're gonna get for the excess. And in all the different scenarios, you can run these models, conservative, if you're wanting to make your model look excellent, you can put in some non-conservative assumptions, and if you want it to be as pessimistic as possible about the bond, you would put in some very conservative assumptions. And under a variety of realistic situations and scenarios, the payback period for the investment is anywhere from 9 to 12 years, all right, which for a 25-year capital investment is pretty good. And then the net present value of the cash flows from the project are all positive in any scenario you run, anywhere from $100,000 net present value over 25 years to, in this scenario up on the board, it's like 311,000. And anything positive indicates just that it's in a financial model that would be a worthy investment, right? So, and you can see up there, as Chris mentioned, around in the column retail bill savings, anywhere, in this scenario, I think I was using 14 cents per kilowatt hour as the energy rate, the ongoing, Eversource rate, which it's dropped now. Last year it was 22 for about half the year. Now it's down to 8 or 10 in the marketplace, right? So that's gonna fluctuate over time, and you're gonna have your bill savings fluctuate maybe between 30 or 40 to 50 or 60, depending upon what the market is doing. You also can sell the renewable energy credits that are generated by solar, and I've got in there just a model of the loan repayment, and you can see the net cash outflows and inflows. So that's basically the financial model. It proves that the investment is a worthy investment, and that the savings generated for the town, I think, are considerable. And we've modeled O&M as well. You'll have to sign up an O&M service provider. So yeah, that's my spiel. Thanks.
Thank you.
me take this one? So we provided for you just how much over the different years that we would do a bond payment, anywhere from 3 to 10 years, so that communities could see how much that cost would be per year and then the amount of interest that's there for both the $715,000 option and with the $850,000 option. So again, the longer you put it out, the longer your interest is, but the lower your payments are each year. So that is something that the board will take into consideration of when we actually do the bond payment or the negotiation in April of where we want to be at based on the bond rates in April. So that would be the second step once it passes, once we get an RFP, getting the number that we need to, and then putting that out to see the actual number of years we want the bond payment to be. That is pretty much all the information that we shared. I don't know if we want to turn it back to you, Allison, if you have any other comments you want to talk about.
No, I mean, I guess the only thing that I would add is that as a board, we have a goal of, what is our goal? Sustain our school by implementing eco-friendly practices while promoting environmental stewardship and maintaining fiscal responsibility. And so this is something that we're looking at, sort of not just the solar, but that we want to move that way for the school. So do you guys have questions?
Was the interest rate fixed on that slide that was back there?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Fixed at the time of whenever we initiated?
Yeah.
Well, that was the estimated bond rate at the time.
And what exactly, how does this benefit the citizens of Brentwood? Like, is it lowering the budget for the school?
Yeah, so our energy costs would go down. In the model that Richard showed you,
Yeah.
it's not just the first year, it's over a long, lengthy amount of time, and then you're actually getting money back in, right?
So if we're earning money from the solar power it's generating,
Yep.
are you essentially turning that funds over to pay this loan payment? Or is it going back into the general fund, or?
That would come in as a revenue, correct?
So,
Molly?
so that would be a revenue in the source, a revenue source in the year that in which it's received, but it would offset the payment we would be making. We're not gonna take this dollar bill and pay it with that dollar bill, but the revenue we receive will offset the tax, impact.
I couldn't quite see in the numbers, but does it kind of equal out? Does it cover the loan payment, or is it more?
While the loan payment,
Yeah.
whether it's a 5 or 10-year period, I don't know how the financing is
Yeah.
gonna work out, but in the first, until the loan is paid off, there's a net increase in this model of about $40,000 per year, other than the year when I've modeled in the tax credit that'll come back, the
Yeah.
30% tax credit. And then in the remaining 15 years, when the loan payment drops off, then you start having positive cash flow to the town of, $55,000 for the next 15 years.
Yeah, so if you were to do a 10-year bond,
Yeah.
the first year you'd only pay interest, which in all scenarios is $21,250, but then the payments start at $115,000 and dwindle until it goes down to $86,000, so it's a little bit less each year.
The tax credit would go towards the bond right away.
Tax credit would come back as a revenue,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yep, so we did talk about the tax credit a little bit. I did talk about with the bond bank, so what we have options. So we would have to put on the warrant the full amount, which I did here, but we can do a bond anticipation note until we know how much the tax credit is, and then we could bond less. So that's an
payment would be
option.
less.
Oh, instead of having that, like, year one, you pay that amount, year two, you get a big credit in, year three, you pay,
We would just bond less.
we would just have a lower for the 10-year bond or whatever.
Correct, if we have the time frame that we could work and do a bond anticipation note, and then bond what it
Oh, that would
actually
be
is.
awesome.
We'd have to work with the bond bank on that.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, if say it was the 850, we got the 255 back, we're only bond for $500,000, a little north of $500,000 over that timeframe.
But yeah, so the bond schedule would just
Yep.
be a lesser amount.
Great, thanks for doing that homework.
How does that work in the time between when we start the bond and when, because wasn't there a delay for that tax credit?
Yeah, so what's gonna happen is, you're gonna see the warrant, it's written as you have to raise and appropriate $850,000, but then later it says, and further to appropriate $21,250 for the 24-25 year. And what happens is essentially we record a revenue for the $850 to offset this $850 because we're getting the bond proceeds in. So what would be raised in taxes is the $21,250. And regardless if you're on a 3, 5, 7, or 10 year, all bond schedules have the same first year interest payment of the $21,250. And that would be similar to what we would pay for a bond anticipation note.
So you can start the work with the bond anticipation note, like,
Yeah.
you just, it's like a.
Like a placeholder almost, right?
Yeah.
That makes, I don't
And
know
so,
why they would like.
and then every year you would put, every year after that, you would put your principal and interest in the budget. You'd have to raise it.
Right.
We would just have to work through that. But regardless of what direction you take, you have to put the full amount on the warrant article, so that's what you have to.
And we would put the principal and interest into the budget, but we would be able to cut from the budget our
Our electric.
electric costs, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
After if we made all those bond payments, we would, yeah.
Well, even when you're making.
Even when
Or
we're
one.
making the bond payments.
So I think we did
Because
need
we
to go
wouldn't-
back to his,
Like, we wouldn't be paying Eversource
right, as much,
because we have the solar.
right.
It would depend on what, I don't know how the town budget buckets are set up, but yeah, if you'd either put the net somewhere, or you could put the full principal and interest payment in one place, and then all the value of the lower school budget energy expense in another place, or you put the net of the two someplace. I don't know how that works.
We can't put the net. We
No,
have
we
to
can't.
pay what we have
Okay.
to pay.
Right.
We have to put what we have to pay.
Yeah,
So,
in the budget, and then any thing would be a revenue to us.
Would we be able to set up a revolving fund for the rec credits?
The rent credit,
Rec.
like the
Rec,
earnings.
yeah, so the town, that's what they're setting up. So the town just bought their array this year, and they're setting up basically a revolving fund, so that when they get the income for the rec credits, then they can use that towards repairs or anything like that. It doesn't have to take a hit out of the budget.
I can look into it. I don't know for sure.
Is that like another like trust fund?
Yeah. So that way, instead of having to use like our budget, we would be using the money that the array was raising to pay for
pay
any
for-
repairs or anything like that.
Instead of that money going back to the taxpayers.
Yes, but it also means we wouldn't have to ask the taxpayers for money if something breaks.
But is that something for 10 years down the line once it's paid off, or you do that right away?
I mean, you could start now because you have that O&M cost every year. So like that could go towards offsetting that.
My only concern about that would be that what we're pitching to the town is like a savings. And so if we then put that savings in a trust so that we're
Oh,
going to
that's-
pay some
No, no,
future
no, no.
maintenance.
We're not putting all the same, it's just,
No, I'm just talking about, so there is something specific called a rec credit where we sell it, somebody
Right.
pays us money for it.
the addition, the extra.
That would be extra.
Right, but those rec credits were on that chart.
Yes.
So we would have to change,
differently.
we would have to pitch it differently. Like we're pitching that there's several buckets of savings. And if we were gonna then take one of those savings and put it into a trust fund for some time down the road, I would just want to be very transparent about that.
Sure. And it wouldn't happen this year anyway, I don't think, because
Right.
it's not a thing.
It's not a warrant.
It's not, well, this project
Yes.
also hasn't been approved yet,
Right.
so.
Okay.
I can definitely ask about it.
Okay. I can probably find the wording for the one that the town's doing and send it to you if that would be helpful.
Okay, that would be super helpful.
Great.
Do you guys have other questions? No. Okay. So do we close the hearing? Okay. So the public hearing on the bond is closed, and we are going to start the board meeting at 5:51. And we'll do the pledge.
Yeah, love to.
You don't,
You are good.
yeah, thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry, I should have said that right up front. Thank you.
You had to do the pledge first.
Yeah.
Like, do I remember?
So, public comment. All right, we'll open public comment at 5:52, and it will go until 6:22. And then, so just jump in if you have other comments. So we're gonna let you go first, I think. You wanna go first, or you want us to approve our minutes first? Are you ready? It's you. Are you planning to stay for the night, or are you gonna go home when you're done? Okay, so why don't you come over and come on over here, Doug, and we'll have you go first.
This doesn't amplify, it just records your voice
Yeah, we're gonna talk.
for posterity.
I'm happy to do it.
Nobody wants to suffer through that. Well, good evening. It's been a while,
A year.
Give or take.
and this is what number?
Why are you looking at me?
Number a lot.
A whole bunch.
Almost 20 years of doing this now. So, okay. The first purpose tonight is to see where are the alligators in the swamp.
Well, I think the only alligator in the swamp is going to be the solar project, which is going to be our first warrant article. I don't expect that we will have any, I don't anticipate that we'll have any problems otherwise.
Okay, so the.
I mean, but you never know.
Well, so that's going to be on its own separate warrant article.
It is, and it's number one.
Before the
It's going to be
budget.
number one.
Still.
Oh,
It has
okay.
to be. If you guys want to take one and pass it down. And it has to, unfortunately, it has to go before our budget, right, by law.
It's a bond.
Because it's a bond, so,
Okay. So, all right, so as a bond, it's going to require a written ballot vote, or should?
Does it have to, or only if somebody requests it?
Well, that's, we should check with council to make sure that we,
Okay.
whatever it is, that we do it correctly.
It does say a 3/5 ballot vote required
Well, there you go.
on the
I didn't have this yet.
Department of Revenue wording.
And is that the one where it has to stay open for a certain amount of time? An hour?
oh, we need to get that going fast.
Can we move on to the budget?
Move on.
Oh, well,
But it does take an hour to go.
Allison, you look.
So maybe before we do the pledge, we open the hour.
Before the pledge even.
Yeah, just,
I love that you
Right.
think that we're gonna get this whole thing done in an hour, so that will
It
be what's
has
holding us up. Yeah.
It has been under an hour.
yeah.
Well, when I first looked, there's only 4 things on the warrant, I thought.
Then you read the warrants.
I think our record is, 25 minutes?
Yeah, we've been speedy. We have.
Well,
So we'll have some presentations. So we're going to do the same thing that we did last year, and that we'll talk to each warrant. Like, we'll give a little presentation with some slides for each warrant article.
okay. So what I need to know, and what Daphne will need to know is who's going to move it, who's going to second it. Now, the reason I say that is you keep control of this thing by the motion and the second coming from the bench. That way, you get to speak to it first. Then we ask the budget committee to speak to it, then we open it to the floor. So, and then in the moderator's rules that I use, and why do I use them? People ask me, why don't you use Robert's rules? Has anybody here ever sat and read all the way through Robert's rules? Nobody was ever sentenced to that? Well, I decided that if you can't fit it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, single-sided usually, but in this case, it's grown to be two-sided, but that's all we need to get done what we're gonna get done. We're not gonna do any treaties, settle any boundaries or anything like that, so.
Yep.
Write any new laws.
So I'll make the motions. Brian will second the motions. I vote for you to do the restricting the motions. All right? That's a lot of pressure.
And after the vote,
After the vote.
restricting reconsideration.
Yep.
Which we can't do for the solar because it's a ballot. Like that,
Then-
once people vote, it's, right?
Pardon?
Yes, you can, because they can call another,
After the hour. Okay.
after they vote, right, because they
But
could,
we
Remember
have
till
to
the
like
end of the hour.
tally them also?
Who will
Like, how does
tally
that
them?
work?
What do you want to have tally them?
Do we have ballot clerk?
What do we usually?
Don't have ballot clerks, so they don't get paid.
Can
We
we,
have Carol and Skip.
I was just gonna
that
say,
show
can
up.
we ask Alan Carroll?
Volunteers.
Okay.
You can ask whoever you want.
Do we do that? You do that? Okay. I
I mean,
don't care
you
who
can
we
ask
ask.
people. I mean, you can't count the ballots,
Yes.
but yes, you can ask people.
I think you should ask
Okay,
as your last duty as the clerk.
you got it.
So we have to have ballots ready.
I do.
You do.
I have them.
You have them. Okay. And so everybody will give a presentation, then everybody will have to get up and vote. And then at the end of the vote, we can move on.
You
For
can
an
move
hour.
on during it.
Right,
You can
like-
move on, but yes, once the hour hits, boom, we're counting ballots, out of there.
Okay. Okay.
Restrict reconsideration.
Yep. All right. All right. What else?
Well, okay, that was the big thing, is who is going,
what day?
we need to know who's gonna move it, who's gonna
March 6th.
second it, and then who's gonna speak to it first. And then the budget committee, Daphne, the budget committee is aware of when and where we're gonna be there. They'll have somebody there. Right, so I always invite the budget committee.
Yeah.
to come.
It's a Wednesday night this year too, so that's different. Make sure it's on everybody's calendar.
It's funny,
On
it's
the
not on the
6th.
school's calendar yet.
Ooh, we should get it on the school's calendar.
Wait a second.
Can we get it in the
s'more.
s'mores
You bet.
every week from now until then? Thank you.
No.
Okay, that's pretty basically, as long as we look like we've got our act together.
Just has to look like
I've
that.
sat through a lot of these where it was not pretty, so.
Well, so we're going to, should we just talk about who's doing what now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Kate, we were going to ask you to present the bond.
I will present the bonds.
Okay. Megan just wrote a note that she'll help you with the slides.
I'd be happy to. I could make slides for all the, so they're the same. you know?
Yeah, and I can just share with you what we did for last year,
Yeah.
and then
Perfect.
we can. So we'll have you all kick it off. Well, Doug will kick it off.
Is it gonna be the same slides?
Same
Yes.
lot.
Could be
Same set.
same-ish, but like the solar one, we'll take some of that, right, information and kind of make it easily
Yep.
digestible.
Okay.
So I'll make some noise with the gavel, call the meeting to order. We'll do the salute.
Yep. Yep.
And then, now, are you gonna do the chair's prerogative and?
Well, so I'm not going to do all the talking. I don't really like to do that. So, so Kate's going to do the first warrant. Then we'll do all that hubbub for the voting. Then Letty is gonna do her spiel for the second warrant, which is our budget,
After we vote?
after we vote, but
After-
within the hour while we're
After
waiting.
we
Right, right, I just
open
want to make
voting.
sure that we're not going to do our whole presentation and
Nope.
then, okay, we're going to, okay.
We'll do it
No,
for
we'll
each
start.
warrant.
We'll do the bond article first and open post voting, and after a while, you can tell when everybody has voted that's going to vote, then we'll call the meeting back to order and go through the rest of the process.
Let me, so you'll read the warrant?
Okay. I've learned over the years that the people sitting there don't read the warrant.
So you're gonna read the warrant?
So I will read they're not that long.
No. So you'll read the warrant, then I'll make the motion and Brian will make the motion and then Kate presents?
Or whoever.
Yeah. That, I just want to make sure that that's the, yes, okay.
Okay, and
And then Kate presents, and then
We vote.
You ask for the.
everybody else talks.
I'd ask her, after the presenters are done presenting, I'll ask for the budget committee to comment. Then I'll open it to the floor and give a little talk about, if you want to talk to this, you got to come up, go to the mic, show your card, all
Yep.
that stuff,
Okay.
and stay on subject. I always love a weather report and comments about somebody's dubious heredity, but we don't have that. We're going to stay on the subject. And the other thing we're going to have a little talk about is amending. We always talk about you can amend the warrant article. Only within what's described on the warrant is the intent of the warrant article. So they can't amend it to buy a new plow for the schoolyard or new lawnmower for the, or whatever, so.
They can change the number, but not the
Content.
intent.
They can't change the intent, that's right.
And if there is a motion to amend the bond article, does the motion to amend have to be subject to a ballot vote?
Can they amend a
I
bond?
don't think you can amend the bond.
Okay.
And I say that because there's this new supplemental sheet the DRA put on. And I had to list long-term notes and bonds and mandatory assessments. So like the SAU assessment fell into the mandatory column, and then the long-term bond, the interest in that first year did. So then at the bottom, it works it down to maximum allowable appropriation voted at meeting.
Okay,
So they can vote the bond up or down, but they can't change the number.
Like they can.
I don't think they can change the number.
No, but they can say, no, we don't want this.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
are we gonna have council
Yep.
present?
Yep.
Okay. If this gets to be an issue, then I'll ask council to tell us whether that can or cannot be. It's much simpler if it can't be.
Okay. I think I'm good.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Really
much.
appreciate
You guys are, you're pumped and ready to go.
We are pumped and ready to go. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other, okay, first of all, if anything comes up that you think that I may not be aware of, either tap Daphne on the,
Yep.
or me on the arm or something like that and clue us in, because sometimes I get focused on something and it could be a fire burning over here until I smell the smoke.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. We know where to find you.
Now, next question is, do we still, have you arranged to borrow the podium?
We have the podium.
You have the podium.
Yes, sir.
took possession of it and won't give it back.
Tucked it away.
Do we own
They
it?
don't have room for it over there in the selectmen's room anyway.
We're happy to store it here. Put that podium wherever we want it.
Okay, and I should bring my own stool, so if I,
I have plenty of stools here.
Okay.
I got a special seat.
Don't need to bring your stool.
I should probably be very nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's
All right.
everything I got.
Appreciate it.
Look it's 6:07 and you get to go home.
You should go
It's
to,
6:07 and you get to go home.
you should go to Beach Plum, get a
That's
nice-
almost too quick. She'll expect the meeting to be done that quick.
Thank you very much.
Ladies, do we have anything else? That's it? Okay.
See you later, Doug.
Good night, Doug.
Thank you. All right. We've had a few new people come in. It's public comment right now. If you have anything you would like to add.
Hi, everyone. Jen Jones, Chair of the Select Board, speaking for myself, but also for the Select Board. Thank you very much for voting to allow us to have the last election here. The election went great. We had tons of space. We had enough room. There were no errors. Everything went really, really well, and we got multiple compliments from people in the public that the layout was nice and there was place for handicapped voting, and it just worked out really wonderfully. So thank you very much for that vote.
Thanks. Yes, because it's on.
Hi, Daphne Watts. I'm your school clerk, but this is my last year. Please meet, hopefully, your new school clerk, Heather Haggett. She will be on the ballot. That's all.
She's running unopposed.
She's running unopposed.
Okay, so if you don't get it,
But you never know.
All right, thank you. All right, so meeting minutes. I did not have anything on the meeting minutes. I'll let you go first.
I read them. I didn't have any either.
wow.
What time of day did you read them?
Accept,
Yeah.
I vote to accept the minutes.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Is not.
I abstained.
Oh, because you weren't here. That's why you had no feedback.
Allison, who's presenting 3 and 4?
I will.
Okay.
That was public minutes. Non-public minutes, anybody have any comments?
I'd like to vote to approve the non-public minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I abstained.
Abstain. All right. So were we gonna switch things around?
We're gonna see if Pippi could go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Do
gonna
her
say.
presentation on
Yep.
SEL so we can get her out
Yep.
of here. That'd be great.
Are you plugging in?
Yeah, I can. I don't have a whole lot of pictures.
Whatever
You want
to do.
pictures? Do you want visual? I can give you visual if you want. Whatever you, I don't know what kind of learners you are. I want to accommodate all your styles.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, pictures are nice. I don't have the full, we have graphs, so,
Yeah. Let's connect.
those graphs that you had from Brooke, do we have just paper? Okay,
I'm gonna pass these out.
okay.
Can I ask one more question about the warrants? Are these the finals, right?
We
that
just
have?
gotta
We
do
still
that. Yeah.
we have
after
to still
this,
vote
we
on
should
it.
go right in the warrants for Letty. 'Cause
Okay.
She's gotta take that over to the budget committee at 7. Yeah.
Okay. And then, could I get them electronically?
Sure.
So that I can put them in the newsletter?
Did you want that?
Thank you. All right, sorry, I just
Oh,
didn't
no
want to
problem.
forget that.
So Pippi, thanks for being here. I know you're gonna talk a little bit about the graph that you see in front of you, which is a third, fourth, and fifth graders took a holistic assessment. So it's their own self-assessment, it's an opt-in assessment, but I'll leave it to Pippi in whatever order you wanted to do this in.
Yeah, so I figured I'll give you kind of an overview like I did last year, just because I don't know how much background, I mean, a lot of you are in the schools a fair amount, but just so you know kind of who's doing what around here for SEL support. So I'm Pippi Bignali, I'm the school counselor here, I am the only one, so We also have a school psychologist who provides some support. She generally does most of our educational testing. She is taking about 4 groups right now, and I think she says 1 or 2 kids on an IEP. So I'm doing the bulk of the sort of SEL direct support. We don't have, we have a BCBA who kind of consults here and there with us. She's here a day, what is she, day and a half now, or is she 2 full days? She's here 2 full days, so we can ask for some support with certain things if we need that. We don't have a social worker, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But there's some argument for having one, because there are pockets of need that is hard for us to address right now. Rebecca Doucette, who is our school nurse, is the closest thing we have to a social worker. She is the person who's generally kind of filling that role. Because I tend to call people sort of see it as like a mental health judgment, whereas I don't know what it is. But first of all, she's amazing with parents in general, but it's just she's able to sort of fill that spot, I guess, if you will. So she tends to coordinate like Thanksgiving baskets and that kind of thing. So she's filling that role right now, and it's working okay. There's definitely an argument for having somebody to fulfill that role, but I can talk about that later. So, so generally, the way we've done it, or I guess because this position started out as part-time and I've ended up being full-time, which is necessary. So the way we have done it in the past is that I'm providing individual counseling for students, group counseling for students, and then going into every classroom, so 18 classrooms, once a month to provide SEL, just direct social skills instruction on different topics. And generally, I've sort of just worked with teachers in terms of what that need is and like what lessons to present. And it's sort of been me collaborating with teachers. So this year we worked a lot. We've obviously felt the impacts of the pandemic, and we've been looking at we're getting a lot of feedback from parents, a lot of feedback from teachers, with just concerns about kids struggling and like trying to identify what the needs are. And we rely a lot on parents coming and talking to us and on teachers giving us feedback in terms of knowing like where the needs are, what the needs are. So Katie Gallo met with, well, all of us sort of met with Dr. Macy, who's like a renowned like trauma specialist, and he did some awesome training for some of us in like psychological first aid and that kind of thing. But he also is consulting a fair amount with CMS. And so Drew Bairstow at CMS, they started doing this holistic student assessment, which is basically kind of I think it existed before the pandemic, but it has been so helpful due to the pandemic. So it's basically a way for students to self-report their SEL needs. So it's a self-assessment that students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade can take, and it gives us a lot of information. It's coming from the students, and it asks them, like, how do you feel about, like, how good do you feel about your ability to make friends? How do you feel about your ability to, like, stand up for yourself? And it asks those kind of questions. And so the kids fill the survey out. It's an online survey. And then they aggregate all the data. So we get a printout that has a student's name, and it gives you a breakdown of like, here are the areas of strength for the student, and then here's the areas of challenge. For instance, this student has a really hard time with reflection. That looks like, I have a really hard time owning my behavior, or I have a really hard time reflecting on like, what did I do in that situation that could have caused a problem, which led to this conflict? So these are kids that tend to have a lot of problems with friends, or, a lot of problems, maybe they're getting in trouble more than we'd like. So it's really helpful because it really targets like those areas of need. It could be peer relations, it could be their ability to sort of regulate their bodies in the classroom. So we get this great like printout of that information. And so what we did this year, we aggregated all the data, and we kind of reimagined my role, which has been interesting and great and also hard because there's only one of me, so trying to figure out, there's always going to be a missing area. If you like allot yourself somewhere, then there's an area that I feel like is sort of missing. So right now what we've done is we use this data to then create these really nice targeted groups. So we have the information in front of you is kind of shows you like what percentages of the kids took the assessment, and then what percentage of the kids, so this is the grade levels, obviously, so it's not 100% because it's just the amount of kids per the grade level. But based on the kids that took the HSA, this sort of shows you what percentage is tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So in an ideal sort of world, 85% of our students would be tier 1, right? And then we have like 5% who's tier 3, and then we have like 10 to 15% who are in tier 2. So, you know, if you look at the numbers, it's pretty concerning. Okay, so, you know, we've got like,
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Can you kind of explain what the tiers are?
yes, okay, so yep, tier 1 is students who are self-reporting that they feel pretty confident and good in their skills, basically, in their social emotional skills. So they feel confident in their connections with adults, and their connections with kids, and their ability to regulate themselves in the classroom. So they're self-reporting, like, I feel really like I'm in a solid place. Tier 2 is like kids that are like, generally I do pretty well, but there's certain areas like assertiveness where I just really feel like I don't know how to handle things. I don't know how to stand up for myself. I don't know how to, you know, relate to peers or make new friends or, you know, change friends if there's somebody that I'm not comfortable with. And then tier 3 is kids that are significantly like and it may not be what you see, but they see themselves as, I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to solve a conflict. So they're reporting like, I don't feel confident at all or solid in my social emotional skills. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. So that's what it is that, so we want our kids, you know, ideally we want 85% at least of them to be tier 1. And we have a lot of kids that are not feeling like they are able to, you know, I guess, perform in that sort of like social emotional realm as much as we'd like. And it's not really a surprise in terms of like the numbers. If we look at sort of globally, like we think about like our 4th and 5th graders, they were kindergarten and 1st grade when like the pandemic was at its height. So they missed a lot of really like key social development. So I don't think it's a surprise, but it's obviously concerning and we need to do something about it. So it's been really helpful to have a tool to sort of restructure things. So the way we've sort of addressed it is that we've looked at all the data, we've aggregated it all. We basically broke it down by grade level and like, all right, who's tier 1, here's tier 2, who's tier 3, and then focusing on those tier 2 and tier 3 kids and saying like, all right, what can we do and how can we use like my time, because I really want to be able to come in and do lessons for, you know, K through 5 every month. But I also, you know, in order to address these significant needs of these tier 2 and tier 3 kids, I really need to use that time to provide some small group opportunities for kids. So that's what we started doing is right now what I've been doing, because it's important for me to just continue to develop a relationship with kids, because kids aren't going to want to come see me if they don't know who I am. So that's just like the bottom line. That's always been a goal of mine, is like I want kids to know who I am when I'm walking around the building, not think I'm there for the bad kids. Like I really want them to see me as just another support person that they know really well, that they feel comfortable coming to see, that trying to like sort of dissipate that stigma of mental health. So we've decided to keep in-class tier 1 instruction for K through 2 because I want them to just see me and know who I am and see my face and hear those lessons as a big group. So K through 2 are still getting once per month SEL. And then 3rd through 5th, because they've seen me and known me for several years already, we have really targeted those small groups. So what I'm offering is we basically looked at all the data and now we sent out letters to parents and said, all right, you know, your child has taken this HSA. They're coming up as having a need in these areas. We're offering this group to be able to provide some support for your student. So, you know, I'll meet with them once a week, and it's 3 or 4 kids, and we work on assertiveness. We work on resolving peer conflict. We work on, you know, all these sort of relational skills that relate to their area of need. So we've just started that. It's been great. The kids have responded really well. Obviously, there's some pitfalls to this, and that is that this is an opt-in, so parents can choose not to take the HSA, which is hard because then we just rely on, you know, teacher data, which is fine.
Yeah, so out of all through grades, it was a total of 107 students that took the HSA. 78% of our third graders, 68% of our fourth graders, and 78% of our fifth graders.
And the kids are taking this in this classroom,
Yes.
and the parents, how do they opt in or out?
So we send home a letter, and parents have to sign it if they're willing to allow their child to participate.
I have a fifth grader. I wonder if I signed that.
I think you did. I'm pretty sure you did. I think I saw yours.
You have shown that you have a gap in reading things.
I would like to point out that I think that there is sorry, I'm on call. A gap in the way we administer stuff to parents and whether, Hi, this is Dr. Bonafide.
So what did you say, 107 students?
Total students.
And there's, I know you gave us the notes, but I have your little chart, so let me just look. So there's 150 third through fifth graders.
Yeah.
So 2/3, a little more than 2/3.
Yeah, so that's definitely an area of challenge, and the way we've addressed that is, obviously we try to just disseminate the information as much as we can, and obviously this is one way to do it. And
Can I, so let's write this up in the newsletter, right? Like what the great work is that's going on, right? This is an opportunity for us to put it out in front of people.
Yeah.
So that like when you send the letter home next year, that perhaps they say, oh, I remember reading about this. There's cool stuff that's going on. Right. I should sign this. I mean, we should have like a plan to support you before that letter goes out asking for parents to opt in.
Yeah, that
Right?
sounds great. I mean, for sure. And then I think that's the thing is, when kids aren't opted in, obviously what happens, and we're trying to fill that space is I do attend PLC meetings every month to talk to each grade level. So we'll sit down, I'll sit down with third grade team and say, who are you worrying about right now? Tell me what's going on individually. And they'll say, I know so-and-so didn't take the HSA, but I'm concerned about XYZ. Again, that's not what the students reporting, that's what the teachers are reporting. And I will also meet with specialists, so they also give me. So then if like a kid's name is coming up with a specialist and they're coming up in the third grade team, then I will reach out directly and try to provide services. But it's obviously, a lot more helpful when it comes from the student themselves.
And so they can't participate in these small groups if they haven't done that? Or
They can, but it's just not as streamlined. It's like I have to then, right.
But if you
so-
collect that data and you think it's important for them, then you would reach out to their parents too, and they would
Correct.
get-
Like with this, it's we can make it all in one PLC meeting, right? So that's what we did in these. We were like, okay. So we sat down and said, here are the kids that are coming up, and the teacher's like, yes, yes, yes. We talked about who would work well together. So we did this in one PLC. Like we created these groups. But then if we have, so we have people who don't know if they want their kid to be in it. There's still that mental health stigma. Not everybody's on board with like, well, what are you doing with my kid? And I'm more than happy to answer questions. I've sat with parents. I've called them on the phone. I've provided more data. So happy to do that back. But yeah, some parents are just like, I don't know if that's what I want. So yeah.
So we'll write something and send it to you.
Yeah.
And have you review it. Like, I think that it would be value added to be from us, and it would be about the fact that we invest in these resources, and this is some of the work that's being done related to this particular resource. But I want it to say what you want it to say.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Yeah,
Just before we drift too far away from the letters home to parents, is there
Yep.
a reason that it's an opt-in and not an opt-out?
It's like a legal issue.
It's a
We're
law
not
that it
allowed
has
to.
be an opt-in.
Yeah.
I think
Which
that-
I think that's another issue. So I did have parents who were like, oh yeah, I wanted to, but I lost it. So there were certain families, and so that's what happened. So like I gave them, like a 2-week period to send them back. And then if I just got crickets, then I was kind of going back to the teacher saying, how much do you want this kid? Do you want me to pick a different kid who might be willing to opt in, or do you want me to try again? So then I'm calling, so it does delay. I mean, a lot of these groups, I was planning on starting these groups in November, but I haven't been able to start until like 2 weeks ago, because there's one kid that drops out, and then I have 2 kids. Well, 2 kids isn't enough for a group, so then I got to pull this kid. So it's certainly not, we haven't worked out all the kinks, but I love the idea of it, and it makes so much sense, and the kids are enjoying, like, it's great for the kids to just, even kids that know me, you know, if I go in and I talk in front of them, that's not the same thing as having a group. Like, it's fun, we work on these skills, we build connection, it's really good for them, and I can honestly say I can't think of a kid who's like even one kid's like, I'm not coming, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, we'll just try it out, no big deal. And then the second time, I'm like, so what do you think? He's like, yeah, I'm still thinking, okay, yeah, I'm gonna be, so they're cute. I mean, I don't say you must, you know, I really try to give the kids some autonomy around it, and we make it fun. I'm not drilling them or anything.
And the
We're having
teachers
fun.
are still doing like the five.
Absolutely. So the kids, it's just another way for, like, I'm really specifically working on, like, this kid really has a trouble reflecting on their own behavior. So, you know, I have a whole group that, like, we've been working on self-control in the past couple weeks. It's just, like, really kind of teaching those skills, breaking them down, role-playing, practicing them. So it's kids that's really their area of need. So, yeah, and it's been great. So the teacher can provide, like, here is self-control as sort of the umbrella, and then I'm doing, like, the fine-tuning of that. It's no different than, like, you know, a math intervention group. So I'm just providing more specific help and instruction.
And are you going to send the data home to families?
So what we've been doing is, the only complaint I have about the HSA, and I love it overall, is it's not really easy to read data. It's like comes in numbers, and then you have to pull that number and then pull that. So it took us a really long time even just to pull through, and we've been talking a lot to them about maybe making it a little more user-friendly. But certainly when parents reach out and say, like, can you provide it? That's what we've been doing. But we had to, like, create it ourselves. It wasn't a way that we could just put so-and-so's name in print. It's like you have to aggregate it kind of yourself.
There's no parent report.
Right. There's no, like, really pretty push the button and, yeah. So that's one area where I would love for them to improve upon, because it would make it a lot easier for us, because that would be the best, is
'Cause then
for
it's like,
parents
oh,
to
look
see
what I
it.
got, and
Absolutely.
you're like, oh, I didn't get
Exactly. So what we said in the letter is, like, if you want this, anything more than just the basics, please reach out and we'll give it to you. But yeah, right now it's like hand aggregating, unfortunately. So that's something I'm hoping that they can remedy in the next few years. The other thing that's hard is the test is long. Like the one, I think, for fourth and fifth is like 85 questions. And right now you can't save it in the middle, which is not great for anybody with any attention span.
They made it in Harvard. What are they?
So they were like, well, you can take the paper test, but then you have to score it yourself. I'm like, yeah, that's a lot, you know. That's the one thing is you know, there's some challenges to that. There's kids that want to zip ahead, and there's kids that don't know what that word means. And so we've been trying to figure out, since we can't save the test, like right now we were doing it as a big group, but we're tweaking all of that too. Like, do we do it in 3 small groups? And so yeah, so there's certainly some kinks to work out, but it's been a really nice way to take a look at, like, how do we directly address sort of the impacts of the pandemic and make sure that, you know, we're getting to kids and where they really need support.
I'm just, like, thinking out loud. But last year, one of the things before David Ryan left was that he was talking about trying to get the community to do, like, to get on board with that Wait Till 8 campaign. And I'm curious, just like with the district wellness council, like talking about like providing schools like opportunities to send health education out to parents. Like, I think that it would be cool if there are things that you think would be great to provide to parents related to health education. I mean, the pandemic's certainly a part of it, but we all know sitting at this table that technology is a part of this issue too. So, like, if there is health education or just education that we could, like, provide out to parents too, that would support the initiatives that you're doing. Like, I mean, as a parent, for you to send something to me that I could read that might help, like, I might tweak my parenting style, would be super valuable. And then, because, right, like, this is not, like, you can't make all the difference that you want to make, right? Like, this, it takes a village.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've thought about that a lot. I don't know what the answer is. You know, I'm like, a podcast? I don't know about that. But I feel like there's a lot of even just, you know, resources. And some parents are really good at reaching out and be like, I'm having this issue with, like, what do I do at this age? And, you know, so I'm able to send that to that parent, but there's 10 other parents who are having the same issue at the same time. So it's like, how do we, you know, I've been thinking like, is it a workshop? Will people come? You know, I don't know, but there's so much information, like sibling rivalry is a big one that, you know, when I was a social worker in Rochester, I put on that like workshop, and I used to do it, like facilitate it for parents to come.
And I recognize that you don't have the bandwidth to
Right.
be
Right.
this everything, but you know, if there are tools or resources
Yeah.
that you know,
Yeah.
just
I mean, could it even be just like a segment of the S'more report?
Yeah.
That's like, you sent the Lynn Lyons podcast, like changed our whole life. And
Yeah.
it was just sending, here's a podcast. to
Right.
listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like if there's like a little, even if
Just a
it's
little.
not a huge thing, it's just like, here's dealing with sibling rivalry, like here's
Yeah.
some resources.
Sure. That's a good idea. So even link with the
Because then,
topic.
like
Yeah.
when parents get this, it's not the only, like they've
Yeah.
heard, you're like,
Yeah.
you're getting to know the kids by going to kindergarten, first grade, like you're getting to know the parents in the same
Right.
way.
Yeah. I like that idea. That's a
do
good
you
idea.
not do you have comments about this? Thoughts?
I mean, it's hard to know how to get information out to people.
Yeah.
Right? You guys heard all the feedback about the solar meeting, even though it was noticed all over the place. I don't know what the best way is either,
Right.
honestly.
Right.
You have to try a variety of different ways.
I know.
Yeah.
Looking at this, like the fourth grade is like looking concerning. Are
Yep.
you kind of taking your efforts and focusing it like third grade is doing okay? So
Yeah.
you're doing less in third grade, more. in
Yeah,
fourth?
that's definitely how it's kind of, and the other thing, you know, and this is what I was going to put up on the screen, but I can just talk about it. So I have the owls, that's what they're called. They're like my self-referral. So that's something I started last year, and it's been awesome. It's like so the kids can refer themselves when they have an issue. So they fill out a little slip, sort of like how big is this problem? They write their name, they write the date, and they can circle like, hey, you know, friends or family issue or bus. And just, again, like trying to break down the stigma of like, you don't need your parents to email me. You don't need your teacher. You can come to me yourself. You can be like, I'm struggling with this. And so that it was a lesson in itself, like talking about how big is the problem? When do you need help? When can you handle it by yourself? And, you know, even explaining my role to them always happens at the beginning of every year. I make sure to go over it again, even though they've heard it every year, you know, just to say, like, is this a problem you could come with? Yes. How does the confidentiality work? So now that they can do that, it's been great because it's actually, so I started the owls. I did it August to December last year. And from the time I reported to you guys, I guess, I had 56 referrals at that period of time. And so this year, I was on a medical leave, so I didn't come until October. So from October to January, I had 59, which to me is a great thing, actually, because it means kids are like, I know when to get help, and I know how to use it. And the numbers reflect, that's what I was going to go back to, the numbers reflect that HSA data. So grade 3, I had 4. Grade 4, I had 38. And grade 5, I had 17 owls. So it really does reflect this data very accurately. 43 of them were by females, 16 were by males. That's also not a surprise because we've taught boys, unfortunately, like, hey, you just, don't talk about your problems, don't talk about your feelings. And it's dispelling that as well, trying to get I think the boys are more likely, because I'm out there twice a week on the playground, so they're much more likely to come up to me on the playground and be like, I'm having this problem right now, rather than taking the time to write a note, which is fine because they're still using me and they're still asking for support. So I think that reflects the numbers. But yeah, like 7 of them were bus problems, 24 of them were family, 12 of them were friend problems, and 16 were just like something about their feelings in general, which was usually ended up being more about friends anyway. So yeah, it's been nice too because I can now kind of keep track by topic. Like, I'm noticing that like a lot of people are having trouble like with siblings in their family. A lot of the family stuff was about siblings or about conflict in their family, which then I'm like, okay, well now I really want to talk about how do you take care of yourself, coping skills kind of. It helps direct like what we discuss in our SEL too. So yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, they had the smallest participation. They're the biggest class. But I mean, if you look at this, it's, I mean, there's only 11
To that
here,
point,
so-
what I left on, can we do an opt-out instead of an opt-in?
No, it's the law.
No, we would love to be able to do that, but it's a legal issue. Yeah, but definitely agree.
Did you already ask
I asked it
that?
after you.
Yeah, I do think that's a big part of it, though. I think people like lost it, didn't read it, you know, that kind of thing. We did talk about that while you were gone, like how to get the word out.
2/3 return, basically. It's a pretty high return for an opt-in.
Yeah, especially for the first, first year, first kind of conversation about it. We were actually pretty glad of the numbers, like of kids that we were able to hear from. So it's a starting point.
Sorry, I'm sorry that I missed this too. Did someone ask if you have normalized numbers for like this? Is there some evidence base for what you would expect for a percentage of each?
Yes, so 85% should be tier 1, 5% tier 3, and then.
So that's
10 to
what's
15%.
normalized?
Yes,
And the way I understand it, there's no third graders for tier 3.
correct.
Way to go.
I just want to make sure that I understand this too. So if we look at the first chart, 10% are tier 3. And so 10% of all are tier 3. So it's 10% of 107 or 11 students got identified as tier 3, right?
Yes.
And so then this tier 3 breakdown, fourth grade is a huge percentage, but it's a huge percentage of just 11 students.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I
Yeah.
understood that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, and it will be really interesting to have this data because in the next several years, we'll see, is it just these fourth and fifth graders that are the most impacted? Are the numbers going to start being more, skewed in a different way? I think just having this will be really interesting. And it also, I mean, from all the psychologists and experts I'm following, we're seeing like fifth graders are more like sort of developmentally like a third grader. So 2 full years behind in terms of SEL skills. That is what generally is being reported. So it makes sense that our fourth graders, if you're thinking, they're like dealing with issues that a second grader would sort of be able to start resolving. That's where they are. They're fighting over chairs, like who sits in the spinny chair. That's not typical what we see for a fourth grade. So that's why it's like we really have to target these things because we really want them to be able to go on to middle school and, be a little more flexible about their seating and their decision making, and that's important.
And because you have the data on individual students, you can actually see the impact of your programming.
Right.
Which will be really interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Because like at the end of the day, if next year you come back to us and say, I need resources for this, it will be important for us to see that what we're doing is actually making a difference and we're moving kids from tier 3 to tier 2 or tier 2 to tier 1.
Yeah.
And like this adds value long.
Right. And so there's certainly a need for K through 2, we can't offer this. So again, we have this sort of lack of information, lack of data. So that's where, we've been talking about, like I've been trying to work with Seacoast Mental Health because they have a grant where they can come in and provide some group counseling because neither Jocelyn and I, when we're tied up with the numbers that we have, we can't provide, group counseling on those levels, and there's a need for it. So we have certain pockets of needs. So I've been trying to work with them to see if they can come in, and it's been a slow process going back and forth with them, but I'm trying to get their support in providing some to K through 2 where there is that need.
We do have someone coming in from Seacoast Mental Health finally on Fridays, and I think the team kind of identified and recommended it to families. So even though it's held here, it's kind of their ball game, their timeline. There's a process for intake with them. So that's up and running now, but it took a while to get that person in here.
Yeah, so it's outside counseling. It's not, so it's actual mental health counseling, but it kind of eliminates the need for parents to drive if parents have issues with transportation or timing, or they can only find telehealth or whatever. So we were able to kind of say, here are the kids we really think could use this, and then we kind of partnered and sent out letters, but they return it to Seacoast Mental Health. They go through their intake process, but it just allows us to hit those kids where we're like, there's a tier 3 need, we're trying to do what we can, but there's another component, like I said, because we don't have a social worker, so the social worker is typically like a bridge between home and school. Without that, if they don't have a special person here, whether it's the nurse or me or somebody, we have a really hard time getting that buy-in. We have a hard time reaching those kids or getting consistency. So right now, we're trying to fill that gap with having at least somebody here to do outside counseling who can provide support. So it's a nice resource. I'm glad she's finally here and able to come and work with some kids. So it's been nice to be able to say, like, okay, I totally understand your schedule is crazy. You can't drive. How about this? And then they still get to work with the counselor. The family still has to be involved, which is really nice. So they can get support that way.
And for any like families that are kind of concerned about the data and all of that, like how are you keeping it confidential, like student data confidential, and will it move like from here to CMS with the student?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought that hard about that. We've been so focused on sort of the in the moment. It's a good question. I don't have an answer to that yet. Right now, it's sort of just like the data we keep for like, reading or math group. Like I don't know that it would necessarily need to follow them. Like it totally depends on the kid and their need. Like I don't think it would, if they were like to sort of like age out or not need tier 2 supports anymore, I don't think it would really be an area of concern. But I meet with the counselors from CMS every time they come over to, we talk about, step up and transition. And we sit down and we talk about any kid that there's any concerns about, like just me and them, we have a conversation. So I give them like, hey, I'm really concerned about this kid. This is the report, the kind of supports the student is receiving, because not everybody's on an IEP or a 504.
So in theory, like the 5th graders that are tier 2 or tier 3, when you have that meeting sometime
Correct.
this spring,
Right.
they would.
Yes, I would sort of say, this is what I've been providing, this is how it's gone, or, I don't know, they're really not making a lot of progress, what do you offer? They might say, oh, I offer a lunch group, and I might say, this would probably be a good candidate. So
But
I would
they-
probably like hand it off, kind of.
They use the same assessment. So
Yes.
when you're talking to them, you can like use.
Right, exactly. That's the
understand
neat
like
thing,
what
is they'll know what we're talking about. They will have already, and so we've been working with them a lot too, trying to gather information like, how are you using this? What kind of programs are you using that align with it? So, yeah.
That's
So
really
it'll
nice
be
for
a neat.
students, too,
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
consistent.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have almost half the 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Tier 2 and tier 3.
And this information is shared with their parents?
Yes and no. Yes, sort of like if you're a tier 1 student, you're not getting, if your student came out as tier 1, you're not necessarily getting any feedback. You're just you don't really get anything at this point. If your student came out as tier 2 or tier 3, you're getting a letter saying, hey, we did this assessment. This is how your child rated themselves. If you're interested, here is this group opportunity. And then parents have to sign, yep, sure, I'm interested. Or they can say, hey, I'd really like more information. I have had lots of conversations, calls, meetings, data breakdowns with families. And, sometimes even the teacher's there. And the teacher says, I know that you're not seeing this at home, but this is what we're seeing in the classroom. So we try to really provide as much as support as, and information as possible, because I know there's a lot of this, like you said, that I don't know the information is completely clear or out there.
Yeah.
So we're trying to educate as much as we can.
The report, I think you missed it, Kate, was the reports that we get aren't really.
They're not
parent-friendly.
user-friendly.
They're not like a family portal.
Right.
Right. It would be nice if we could move in that direction. Like, that's what I expected, honestly. The same as you. I was like, oh, it's going to give us this nice printout. But we have to aggregate each piece of data ourselves. So it doesn't give you a student name, all this information, or even like a number. Fine. We have to take the number, go back, figure out the student, go back, figure out each piece of data. So yeah, eventually that would be awesome, because I would love to be able to show them the numbers, because I think that would be really convincing. And, of course, when parents ask for the information, we give it to them.
Do parents have to opt into the kid getting services for this at school?
Yes.
And how is that how are they being asked that? And or better question, I don't care how you're asking
Yeah, sure.
it, but are you getting a response from everything, yay or nay?
Yes, I'm getting, generally, yes. Parents have been pretty good about it, but I was saying that there have been times where I haven't heard anything, and then I'm not sure if they don't want to or they just missed it, or so I'll go back to the teacher and say, how much do you want this kid in a group? How concerned are you? Is there a different kid you want me to pull, or do you want me to follow up? So I just spent last week following up with a bunch of families where there was sort of like no information. They didn't get back to me because I tried to send out an email to families as well as like an actual form letter so that they could hear from me a couple times. So yeah, so I emailed some families, called some families last week to try to just say, are you not interested or did you just miss it? Because I know, like, you know, we get a lot of emails from school. We get a lot of stuff that comes home. So yeah, trying to circle back to families. And yeah, it was kind of 50-50. Some people are like, yeah, I'm not sure if it's for us, or my kid's not sure, or, you know, and if they say that, I said, well, why don't you have them come for a session? See what they think, because I know that they don't know a whole lot. I try to explain a little bit, and maybe they can come for a little bit and see how they think. And honestly, most kids that come are like, yeah, cool, this isn't that bad. I kind of thought it was
What
scary.
do
but
they
it's not.
have to like miss in the classroom?
I spend most of my planning time during PLCs making sure that they're not missing anything academic. They miss read aloud typically, which is a bummer. Like read aloud's nice and relaxing, but it's not super. They don't miss anything majorly academic. They either miss like the right at the beginning of the day, which tends to be like catch up on work, quiet time, or share, or they miss right at the end of the day, which is same like packing up, or they miss read aloud. So yeah, I try to make sure that they're not missing any like other important thing that might, you know, get in the way.
Like lunch.
Like lunch, yeah.
Recess.
Yeah, we don't do lunch, we don't do recess, I don't go there, no, no, they need that.
To manage.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of juggling and, you know, and that's the thing. If I have 2 kids opt out, then I'm like, oh, I have 1 kid now, and now I have to go back and I have to find time to go back and talk to all the teachers and relook at all the data. So there's definitely some kinks to work out, but I feel good about where we're going. I feel like we're aligned in a different way, which feels nice.
One of the things that I would love to know is how much of your time is being spent on administrative duties.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it sounds
more than I'm good
like a
at.
lot.
More than I'm good
It
at, probably.
is.
Yeah, and I will say, you know, Brooke, our secretary, she's excellent. Like I had her make some drafts for me. I had her aggregate some. So I do anything that's not confidential. I try to see if there's people who can do something. Like even just the planning for groups. Like sometimes I have to eliminate 600 things. Like she's awesome. I'm like, sorry, Brooke, do you mind? Like, you know, because that is like. You know, I have like 12 kids to get to because they sent owls to me, and I'm not going to be cutting and laminating things if I have to do that.
That's not a great use of your time.
Right,
That's really what I would
exactly.
love
Yep.
to know. Like
Yeah.
if
It totally
when we
depends on the
have
day,
to look at
for sure.
this next
Yeah.
year, if we have to look at it,
Yeah.
like how can we make it that
Right.
like most of your time is spent doing what your skill is?
Yeah, and I mean, the 504 plans, it's, the managing of the plans is fine, but when I have an intake for a 504, that's that's a significant amount of paperwork that is, yeah, it's a lot. So, I mean, I could spend a lot of time pretty much doing all of the like background stuff for that, which is, you know, it is. Like then I'm missing time where I could be working with a group to door. And we did try when, you know, Katie helped make my schedule, we really tried to leave pockets where there is planning time, there is, you know, but I do get called for crisis. I get called if a kid's struggling, if a kid won't get out of their car. Like those are things that I get called for and that's a need. So then the admin stuff comes later. And that's normal, like I want it to be that way. But yeah, that's the reality is, you know, there is a lot. Or then I have teachers coming in, it was just conferences. So you can imagine there's a lot of teachers like, hey, I want to talk to you about the concern that was brought up. So there's a lot of things that get in, you know, it's busy. I like it because it's busy, but it's, yeah.
Chris,
a lot.
what does Stratham and Exeter have for like SEL?
So they also have school,
How many?
I'd have to look exactly how many they have, how many school
I mean, maybe
counselors.
give us Stratham, Exeter's.
Yeah, I could come back. I don't want
Yeah.
to say it off the cuff,
Yeah.
but they have social workers
they
as
have a
well.
social worker?
Yeah, and school psychologists and BCBAs.
Yeah.
You're seeing more and more of the resources that we've been talking about, you know, what we
What's
put
a
in our budget.
BCBA?
Behavioral, certified behavioral board, looking specifically at behaviors for students and giving supports to the support staff that are working with those students, so. But I could give you a breakdown if you wanted to at a future meeting.
Yeah.
So it's comparable.
Yeah, we're in
Or
this
even
tough
like
spot.
next fall. I mean, yeah.
We're in the middle.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know, we're big enough to need more help, but we're small enough where it doesn't look like we do. And so we have a lot of people just overlapping duties that, you know, I think that in my opinion is the need for a social worker, is that, not to say that we're not doing our absolute best to address some of these families, but we're missing these sort of certain families where they need like really intensive, just like that bridge made, because we don't have the personnel. You know, sometimes we'll call DCYF and they're like, do you have a social worker? They should really be doing this. We're like, nope, just me. It's like, you know, assistant principal and the counselor. So there is a lot of that we're not able to do because we don't have that extra person to do groups or the extra person to make that family connection. So we don't have to call DCYF. I mean, that's obviously our last resort. We don't enjoy doing that. But if we can't get any response from the family, or we can't, you know, make that connection, it really leaves us no opportunities if we can't, kids aren't coming to school or there's information we don't have. Yeah, so we are big enough where we're right in that middle ground of like needing a little bit more help. So,
And
yeah.
is that something that could be a shared position with another school? Like if we don't need a maybe full-time?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, like, because there's other little, you know, some of the others, I'm sure smaller schools could
Do
benefit.
Kensington, Newfields, or East Kingston have a social worker?
Social worker, no.
I don't think any of them do.
No, only Exeter, Lincoln Street, and Main Street have a social worker, and then there's a social worker at Stratham.
Full-time?
Yeah. Then at least 2 to 3 at the middle school, and then same at the high school.
And
3,
the
so-
middle school and the high school got added or
This year.
addition?
Yeah.
Added.
Yeah, so there's only 2, I believe at the high school we have 4 social workers now, and again, filling that was difficult.
Yes, I'm sure. And are the other elementary schools doing this HSA?
Not that I'm aware
Not
of.
every school is doing it, no.
I think we might be the only elementary school that's doing it right now, from what I know.
A lot of schools are still doing DESA. That's their screening.
And the reason we went away from DESA is we were missing, well, first of all, it's the teachers reporting for DESA, so it's not the kids, number one, which was our big concern. Like, we want to hear from kids. We want to know what kids, even if sometimes we get a tier 1 kid and we're like, wow, I would not think that kid's tier 1. So that's a conversation like, okay, this kid is overestimating their skills. Like, they say they're fine and they're having conflict every day on the playground. That's data for us. That's a very interesting conversation that we have.
So you said it was out of Harvard. I assume that it has been proven to be a valid and reliable tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gotten really it has a lot of good feedback, let's just say. I know that was well researched before CMS adopted it, and then, you know, we talked to them for a while before we were even willing to sort of like present it as a thought, like, you know, should we do this? We had a lot of conversations with them around like, how's it going? Are you feeling it? Like, it's helpful? Is it a good, you know, do you think it's accurate? And that's why I like having my own, like my OWL referrals, because it's interesting to see like my own numbers and what I see and like what I hear from parents and what I hear from teachers, and then looking at the numbers, I've found it to be surprisingly on point, you know, because I wasn't sure. I'm like, do they understand the questions? Are they being honest? Like, there's all this, you don't know. You know, kids just clicking buttons. We don't know. But yeah, I've found that kids have been surprisingly honest about it, and the kids that have, I don't know, not been honest, it's kids where we look at it and we go, oh, this is a kid that wants you to think this, so they probably picked this because they want you to think that they're good at this. But we all are like, that's still an area of need. So that's a kid I would still see. Or we're like, wow, there's a big discrepancy. This kid's coming out as tier 1, but we have a lot of concern. So it gives us a lot of data too, even when it's like we don't think it's accurate. It's still a lot of great information for us and good conversations to have with like the family, with, you know, the PLC team. So
I was going to say that the PLC conversations are just as, if not more important, because it's day to day. It could be something that just pops up. We don't just say, well, it didn't come out on the assessment, so it's not really.
And with 85 questions, they're probably asking the same thing like 5 different ways.
yeah, different,
So-
exactly. And I like it because I feel like we catch those quiet kids, those kids that the DESA catches kids that you would know anyway, kids that are loud and kids that are disruptive or they're getting in trouble. This is like looking at like kids that, like, there's kids that came up as tier 3 and I was like, wow, I would never have thought that. And that's more concerning to me, way more concerning. That kid who's just a sleeper, and they're like depressed and they're, you know, upset, and, you know, and then when you start talking to people, you're like, it's like there's pieces, but everybody has a little piece. So I find that to be the real benefit, is that you're catching kids that you might think are okay, but they're not, like, in, you know, at least for themselves. So that's more important to me.
This was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give you the information. Yeah, feel free, disseminate it, please. Like, I would love for you to let people know, because it's important, and I don't want them to think I'm like brainwashing their kid. Listen, we are here to help them, and we are like working really hard to, you know, give them good information. Don't let me. I'm not brainwashing your kid, I promise. Like, we're working hard to try to support them where they are, and it's
I think
good
it
work.
would be really cool to have a little corner in the in your s'mores that like
What's that?
I said I think it would be really cool to have like a little corner in your s'mores that like links to resources.
Yeah.
I think
Even
what
like
we'll do
once
is
a
work
month
on
or-
kind of like a summary of our conversation tonight, and then put it out there.
Yeah, well that, Ron,
But,
but,
like, the
also just
resources
Yeah,
like
just like,
hey, like
are you
you
having
know,
issues with
here's
this?
like
Yeah.
how to help your kid advocate for themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
This is a little data. Here's a link if you want to learn
Yeah.
more. Or here is
Here's how to handle
you know
soccer.
Right. Oh, good. I don't know about that one. That one's
this is
always-
how to
that's
get
an
your kid to
ongoing
stop
issue.
tackling people.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting that Seacoast Mental Health is now in the schools. I know they're in a lot of other local schools.
Yes.
And,
But I
also just
and, I think that's a
We
great.
fought hard for that one. It's
resource.
hard to nail them down. But yes, it is a great resource, and that's the thing. It allows us to sort of bridge with them too. It's
Right.
great. So
Yeah, I mean, that's huge for access to care for
Yes.
these kids, because, you know, trying to get in over to Exeter.
I know.
or
Right.
Portsmouth.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, public comment. It should have ended a long time ago. Anybody have anything before I close it? Okay. So public comment is closed at 6:57. I realized the last time I totally missed the closing of it too. So Letty, let's get you going.
Okay.
We need to just, what she needs is for us to approve
She just needs
this.
the language if we're approving the warrants as they are written, to be able to bring to the budget committee so they can look it over.
So can everybody just take a really quick look at them?
I believe everything has stayed the same except for the first warrant, correct, Molly? We hadn't changed anything from the last time we met?
No,
Uh,
the first one we
nothing really changed. I think last time, yeah, I don't think anything changed since last time.
Okay.
Just because I know you guys wanted to do the 2 trust funds, 20 for the special ed, that was gonna come first, and then the technology one, that was 10.
This is like a really stupid thing, but there's a question mark instead of a period. We just leave that, right? And
Where?
in the third article, third line.
go after Swayze Central School.
But that's okay.
What are we aiming
Well,
for
they're
for the
both
special
Article
education?
2 and 3 ask questions, shall the school?
Yeah, they're asking
Cool,
questions.
And then the other two are 2C,
And
which
for
are
the
not really
technology.
questions.
Okay.
Our goal would get to,
It's funny that they're written differently.
years that we're
Yeah.
being able to pay for.
For like the stuff, yeah.
And Letty, I did print a copy if you wanted to bring it, but I put the date of the last posting date on the, from the DRA.
Is that some sort of official copy that I have to get signed?
Well, yeah, but it would be after the public hearing. Because they're gonna have a public hearing, right?
Yeah, next Monday.
Yeah, so this would be after that.
Can I come back that up on Monday?
Yeah, that's great, because I have to change the date on this anyway,
Perfect.
because
I will for sure lose that piece of paper.
that's fine, because I followed the date on here, but this is to a March 12th, whereas we're March 6th, so I had to back it up 6 days.
Okay.
So I need to back this up 6 days.
Okay.
So I will do that.
Wait, oh,
So, Article 4, though, we don't have to raise and appropriate. It should
We
be,
do. It says to raise and appropriate,
You have
and this sum will come from.
Yeah,
So
you
is
have
it-
to raise and appropriate in all articles, but it just depends if it comes from fund balance or not.
well, you don't, capital,
doesn't say it
number
in
3 and
number
4 are written differently, asking for us to do the same thing. So,
Well, one is to establish a trust fund, and one is,
right, but it
then
says to raise and appropriate.
And
Up to
Article 3 says Raise and
$10,000.
appropriate too. Shall the Brentwood School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to 20 to be placed in the special?
Oh, it's just up higher,
It's
that's
just
why.
phrased differently, but it uses the same
Yep.
verbs.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
I
to
find the first one to be
approve.
so confusing, but
Yeah.
The first
It
one,
all- yeah.
Article 1.
yes.
This was
It
the
has so
standard
many
template.
components to it. So we're asking them to raise and appropriate $850,000 to authorize the issuance of an up to $850,000 bond. To authorize officials to issue and negotiate such bonds. To further raise and appropriate an additional 21,000 to meet year one. Right? So it's asking four things. We need to just be clear when you present,
So-
when you present
So
that,
just so that we're clear, so we're actually asking to raise an appropriate
871.
871.
No.
Technically, the raise and appropriate is the 871,
But next
But-
year it's only the 20.
but it's the tax impact is only 21, because if you,
Right, okay, that's fine, I
Yeah.
understand that.
the other part, you have the 850 coming in as revenue from the bond proceeds. So what the tax rate needs to raise is the 21,250
That's the first year.
in the first year.
And the 850 does not include any other interest payments.
The 850 is the total amount, and that's authorizing you to be able to spend it in future years.
But does it include interest?
No, that's just that's the amount of the
It's just the
bond.
principal, yeah.
you got that all right for the slides.
And this was the exact words from the DRA template.
So Megan's
why I
made a
can't-
motion
yeah.
for the four.
To approve them
Four.
as written.
I
Second.
will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, Letty,
Thank you.
you good to
That's
go?
why I can't.
Lydia, I also emailed this to you, so if you didn't want to drive to my office, you can also.
I'll drive.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I have no idea where we are on here.
So Molly, just to finish out with manifest.
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay, so the manifests are somewhere.
They're here.
Okay. So we already talked about the warrant articles. That's good. So the current year financials, so I did include in your board pack. We had pretty minimal spending since the prior month, but I did note on here what that spending was. We also started putting on some areas where we are seeing revenue higher than planned. So with the higher interest rates and us moving to TD Bank, we've had great success with that. And we had a few more preschoolers than planned. So with that being said, we are at 181,000 still remaining. Did anyone have any questions?
I didn't. I was glad to see that we had more, there were more numbers in parentheses than usual. Did anybody else have questions?
No, that's good.
And so I think we covered the other stuff I had earlier. So just if you want to pass back the manifests.
All right, while I'm looking at these quickly, do you want, we got safety and security up next.
Yeah, there's the meetings, the 22nd.
Yep. So you have no
So
update.
Just quickly, I'd like to update the board. I met with Rich Kane a few times since we had our Homeland Security visit and audit. We are going to be doing a school-wide Alice drill on February 15th. So we'll communicate that home to parents prior to. All students and staff will get a chance to hear what that alarm will sound like. It'll be a narrative from me prior to that alarm going off, and each grade level is going to do an appropriate aspect of that Alice drill. So that's scheduled on February 15th.
And are all like facilities projects, they're done? They were being done earlier in the month, in January, security projects?
They're still testing the,
Yeah, the repeater.
the repeater.
But
So
it's
not
installed.
complete, it's installed.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no superintendent evaluation committee update meeting this week. So, policy.
All right, so, as usual, Heather has a great summary in the materials. We have 4 new policies to adopt and 2 old policies to rescind, and they're not even really full. Well, one of them isn't really a full policy, it's more of an addendum to a prior policy, but one of them is being replaced by one of the new policies. And the third policy that's listed in the agenda is AP work, which doesn't apply to us. So that's good. The 4 policies that we are adopting are all in reaction to state statute and federal law. So none of these are things that we have a huge amount of control over, although I did note that specifically on policy KEC, the committee made some changes to the originally proposed language based on some comments submitted prior to the policy committee meeting, which I did not attend, in full disclosure, because it conflicted with the CMS concert. So we have 2 policies that are fairly straightforward. Well, one's fairly straightforward, limited English proficiency instruction, fairly minimal changes. And then 2 that relate to home education or education outside of the school. Again, all really implementing requirements of state law. And then the last one is public reconsideration of library materials. This is where we had made some changes at the policy committee to be more protective of freedom of access to information for students, but again, reflecting rights available under state law. Heather, correct me if I missed anything or misstated anything? Okay. So we could either do, if there are no questions, do all the policies all at once, or break them down by the English proficiency and then the home education ones and then the library one, or however you guys would prefer to do it.
I just did the BTA have any?
They had no input. Nope.
I don't. I didn't have any questions about any of them, so I'm fine doing them all at once.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I'll make a motion to adopt policies, I'm scrolling all the way back to the top, IHBAA, IHBG, JJJ, and KEC as presented in the meeting materials.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And then I'll make a motion to withdraw policies KEC R1 and KEC R2 as
And
recommended in the
we
materials.
don't have to worry about LEB.
And LEB was not an existing policy, so we don't have to remove it
Okay.
because it wasn't there in the first place.
All right. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was really fast policy work. You're good.
They're interesting.
I just didn't want to leave in the middle.
Interesting policies.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Leave, go leave. Leave in the middle. I don't care.
Board member queries or correspondences, did anybody have anything?
No.
No. I think Heather and I chatted today about the request to look at the health insurance.
Yes.
So she is going to respond back to the town. Yep. Community engagement. No.
Is that my committee?
No, that's, well, no, we don't have, so we'll do a newsletter article. There was a topic that we had that we wanted to do next. I don't remember what it was. I'll have to go back to my notes. Anybody have
Because,
anything?
it doesn't, it's after the budget passes.
It is, so Letty I didn't see, did you see, did Letty send you and Ron, like she was supposed to put something in for the budget?
I've not seen anything. Did you see anything, Ron?
We missed that. There would have been the January 15th deadline, so hopefully she did that. And they're asking for the warrants right now for election one, so I'll just follow up with you tomorrow
Who's asking for it? Because the town hall already has it.
No,
The
Brentwood
the
newsletter.
Oh, okay, okay.
I just want to put them in there.
Sure. Yeah, I can forward you the email I sent Karen with it.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect. And so we just need to come up with, are you gonna have like results from your survey anytime soon?
We have a meeting, yeah, I think so. We have a meeting next week. And so I'm wondering if we will have.
Well, maybe
that.
we'll do that like 2 out. Did the solar, because the solar was gonna go into the last one too, did the solar go into the last one? I guess we haven't missed the deadline for the election one, because that's what they're asking the warrant articles for.
Yeah.
The last month, we were
I-
gonna put something in about solar and
I was
about-
going to.
Yeah. You and Letty were gonna do budget and solar.
Oh, I didn't know
Okay.
that. So I
All right, so let's, election. Edition. I'll check with Letty. Warrants. Okay. Okay. And then I'll check with Robin about what the next deadline is then. All right, budget committee, Letty's not here, so I think we're good to
Head
go.
in there now.
Yeah, we're good to go. And there's nothing, the wellness committee met, but I wasn't there because I was at work. I don't know if,
I was not there.
yeah. All right. You have anything else on your,
Just non-public.
we're done. It's 7:12.
Wait, we have
Would you like
non-public?
to-
Yeah.
Yes, we have to go into non-public, so.
Under
For attending?
letters A and C.
That's Letty's job.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll make a motion to enter non-public pursuant to RSA 91A3, A and C. A3I, A.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 We're gonna have to do that.
Wrote down.
Okay. All right, who would like to
I'd
make?
like to make a motion to approve the personnel matter as recommended by the superintendent's office.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You want to make the next one?
Sure. Motion not to reopen the BESPA contract? Is that appropriate? I don't know what the language we need is.
Except that the proposed memorandum.
Moment not to accept the proposed MOA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Really
And-
quick
yeah.
question. The calendar we voted on didn't include, this is like September 10th is a primary day in New Hampshire. Do we have to like vote to close that day?
Well, we haven't voted on the Swayze calendar yet, because you would come
Okay.
to us and propose the.
So that's like a different.
The professional development days for the, yeah.
So we can do that then?
Yep.
Okay.
I would just say, Ron, at the last joint board meeting, there was some discussion about the confusingness of the co-op schedule versus the elementary schedule this year. It does feel more confusing than it has in the past, and for families that have students in both. I guess, like, my preference when we vote on our calendar this year is to have a little bit better alignment on those full days. Right?
We're gonna work at that, the SAU.
Okay,
With our principals to be able to have more alignment.
Okay.
throughout the entire SAU.
okay,
We heard that loud and clear, so
Yeah.
we'll start that task actually on Wednesday,
okay,
then work with our principals to have it more streamlined.
okay. Thank you. Causing chaos in homes when one set of kids gets to take a day off and another set does not.
Not as much
when you-
chaos as the 5 a.m. phone call when your elementary school kids have to stay home, but your middle school and high school kids have to go to
That's
school.
when you need Pippi's sibling resources.
We haven't had that this year, but we had it twice last year when the power outage. I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing now?
And who's babysitting? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep. All in favor?
Fine.
All right.